in the first half of our course, you've gone through pretty much everything modeler and layout have to offer in terms of animation, lighting, surfacing, and even setting up a render. But there's a lot more to Lightwave, especially Lightwave 11. So let's fire up Modeler. And what we're going to do here is actually build a small little creature, a little vampire bat. A very simple one, because I want to talk about bones, I want to talk about flocking, I want to talk about instancing, and we're going to use this project to create a larger project with all of those elements inside it. Rather than just demoing all the different features, it's nice to actually put it to use to a final product. So that's what we're going to do here. And based on the introductions that you've already watched in the very first part of the course, we're going to take all of that knowledge and put it into this final project. Well, not our final project, but this full project, I should say. So what I'm going to do is press the D key in Modeler, and we're going to get to the Backdrop tab. In order to build this bat, we need some kind of reference. And I went online and I looked at some different bats, but I figured the best way to do it is actually use one that I had built years ago in 1999 for a small TV show we did. And what I'm going to do is go to this top left viewport. That's this one right here. And under the image drop down, we're going to select Load Image. Then in your bat reference file that's within your images folder, there is a bat top view. Select that. And there you can see an image of a bat all the way in there. Now by default, it's set to probably about 2 meters there. That's okay. I'm actually going to make it 5 meters and hit the tab key and bring it to full view. And the reason I'm doing that is because even though what you build in 3D is relative, you can have a 100 millimeter chair and a 6 kilometer television. They're all going to render the same. It's based on the detail of the geometry itself, not the actual scale of it. But that being said, I do find that certain things in terms of animation and bones are much easier and work a little bit better when the object's a little bit larger. Also, when it comes to animation and working around layout, everything should be relative to its real world scale, but you don't want things too small. And a bat is actually really pretty small. It's basically a flying mouse, but you know. So then what I'm going to do is change the image resolution to 124 to 1K image, because what that saves me from is very pixelated image. So if I go back down to like 64, notice when I zoom in, that's really, really blurry. But if I bring it up to 1K, which is closer to where it was when I grabbed it, it looks much better, and we can be a little more accurate as far as building over it. The next thing I want to do is bring the brightness and contrast down. And the reason I'm doing this is so that when I build my geometry over it, like the box tool, its wireframes are not going to be lost. We want that just as a reference back there. So that should work pretty well for us. In fact, you can do it so that it almost just blends right in like that. Next, the top right is our perspective view. We don't need anything there. The bottom left, go to Image and choose Load Image and choose the bat front view. And even though it says front view, it's the front view of the bat, but here it's the back view. Remember that Lightwave Modeler was built around video and layout as well. So all those years ago when this was created, the back view means you're looking towards the back of your scene in 3D, on a simplest term. So we're looking towards the back of the scene, not so much at the front of an object. And now that I've told you that, that is what I've named my image as front view. We're also going to make that 5 meters. Okay, and that scale is actually pretty close, because you can see that the side end of the bat here is 2 bricks or 2 grids. Same here. So that works okay. And we'll just up the resolution a bit. We'll bring the contrast down and brightness down. And finally, the bottom right is a side view. So for image, choose Load Image, Side View. And for this one, we're going to keep this about where it is. That one's maybe needs to be just under 2 meters, about 1.8 or so. Just kind of like that, because if you look at the top of the bat and the bottom of the bat, notice that they are just a short amount from that grid, and that's one whole grid, short amount from there. So that's kind of what we got going here. Short amount there, short amount there. Again, we're doing this very rough. Now, this whole technique is actually really, really useful for cars and airplanes and any kind of thing that you really need to build it accurately. A bat like this, we can kind of freeform, but we generally need it as a reference. We need to really have some kind of scale and proportion, and so that's why we're doing it this way, and it shows you this technique. I've seen people say, well, give me a client logo, and what they'll do is they'll scan the business card or the letterhead in, and they can literally trace over it in here with, let's say, the pen tool or the Bezier tool or the spline draw, and get a nice representation of that logo without even worrying about an EPS file. Airplanes, cars, cameras, all those things can have a top, a side, and a bottom view, and you can put those in here and trace over them or draw over them as reference so that everything is in the proper proportions. So, good way to work. And that's how you do it. We've not created any geometry yet, and you'll notice that the layers up here are all still blank. All we've done is put a background image in, and that background image doesn't actually affect the model or the render or anything. It's just a reference file. If you press the D key again, there is a preset, and you can actually save that backdrop so that you can load it up again. And there's one already saved for you in your project folder if you want to load it up. So now with this guy right here in the top view, we'll zoom in a little, and then in the first layer here, which is blank, we're going to select a box, and we're going to draw out a box kind of around the body here, right up to the neck. And then in the front view or back view, we're going to pull it out that way. And actually this view here looks pretty good. So I'm going to pull that base down just a little bit more. And again, we don't need this to be 100% accurate that I have to go in and rescale this front image. It's just reference for us so we have an idea of what to build and where to go. Now, if I stopped here, I'd have a nice little ball when I hit the subdivisions, when I hit the subpatch button. But I want to put a little bit of a segment on there. So I'm going to move my mouse into this view, and then with the up arrow, I can actually add segments, and with the right arrow I can add segments. With the left arrow I take them away, and the right arrow and the down arrow I take them away. So all we really want, we don't want too many, just one this way and one this way. And you can see here in the right view, if we press the up arrow, we get a segment on the Y. And that's all we need. So we'll click the box tool to turn it off, then we'll hit the tab key. And we get a very nice kind of rounded shape. It's like a bar of soap. But it's just enough geometry to make it clean and just enough to let us manipulate it real easily. First thing I'm going to do is press F2 to center that out. Then I'm going to press symmetry at the very bottom of the screen. And remember that whatever I do on the positive X side will be mirrored on the negative X. So you want to use this very deliberately, otherwise it'll be very awkward working. Things will be happening that you don't want it to. Then we're going to go to Modify and choose Dragnet. Now I'm just going to show you this one as an idea, but if you hold the right mouse button and scale, there's a range of influence. And what can happen is that when you're using that, it's going to pull the other side. So like look at the middle here, it's kind of shifting that. And what that means is that often when I come to the other side, some of the geometry won't actually mirror. So you got to be really careful with that. So if you don't want to use drag, or dragnet, use drag. Dragnet is a magnet with the drag, and the drag is basically click and pull. That's all we're doing. Dragnet pulls with an area of influence, a range that can actually make things smooth, almost like a fall off. So all we're going to do then is use drag, so we have very precise control, and again symmetry is on, and then just looking in each of these views, we can very simply just shape this out. Pull that neck up like that, and we can pull the center one. Might have to do it from a different view, but pull these top ones in. And if you want to hit the tab key and turn that off and on just to see how it's going, that's fine too, or if it's cleaner for you to work that way. But see, with just a very simple amount of geometry, we're able to create a really nice body shape, and it hasn't been too difficult. I'm going to turn the tab key off just to keep that subdivision off for a minute, because I don't like these guys here. These needs to be in, and we'll pull this in, And we can pull this one up a little, pull this one up a little. And again, just the drag tool, and I'm clicking and dragging. You don't actually have to select anything. And then this one, pull it down like that. That, and we'll pull that over there. Pull that over there. There we go. And you can see that if you had a lot more geometry, you'd be pulling and working a lot more, and your results might not be as smooth. I think I want to pull these guys here. And the reason this geometry is important, aside from getting it nice and clean and smooth, is that we're going to build out from this. So again, less geometry, the better. All right, so if I hit the Tab key now we've got a really nice looking shape that is a good base for the body of the bat. It is nice and even. And if you press O on your keyboard, our subdivision is only set to 3. So great looking geometry with very, very little polygons and very little subdivision. So let's save this, Command or Control S, and we'll call this Bat Body. And we'll go version 001. Then we're going to save it, File, Save Incremental, and now it's version 2. So version 1 is your base bat body. Now symmetry is still on, so we could essentially build out and hope that we don't screw it up too much. Back here, let's start with this back leg. So in polygon mode, we're going to just kind of select some geometry back here. And I think I'm going to deselect that, press the Tab key, just so I can see what's happening, like that. Okay. Now, even though symmetry is on, it doesn't look like it's being symmetrical at all for me. Because when I select one side, it should select the other. Like that one works, but for whatever reason, the back side is no longer symmetrical. And that's okay. It does that once in a while. So, how do we make a leg out of this? Well, we could bevel, but remember that bevel, as I showed you very early in the course, will separate these polygons. Okay. We could use smooth shift. We'll go to multiply. But that kind of pushes them out a little bit. So I think multi-shift might be the way to go. And we're just going to click and drag. And all that does for us is just duplicate the geometry. Now that it's duplicated, Shift H for scale. And I'm going to scale that down. Then we can even press H for stretch and kind of flatten it if we want and shape it a little bit. Press the T key for move. Kind of like that. Press the Y key for rotate, and we're going to set our mode for our rotate to be mouse position, which it is. I'm going to click and drag right here and then rotate out that way a bit. And then from there, we can go back to drag. And we can pull this in. So as you're building out from something like this, it's important to get that initial base correct, because that, of course, is going to influence everything you build from there. And when I hit the Tab key, notice that it still looks really smooth. So select these polygons, multiply, multi-shift, and I'll click and drag a little bit. Then I'll press Shift H for scale. Scale this down. Let's press T for move, and let's just move this out. And again, we're not going for super accuracy here, just give you an idea of how this model can work. And that's looking pretty good. So you're thinking, well, what are you going to do with the other side? Well, what I'm going to do is ending up cutting this and mirroring it over so I don't have to build 2 sets of legs. Even though we went through the trouble of being symmetric, it can do that once in a while. All right, let's do one more. Multi-shift at this joint. Click and drag. Shift H for scale a little bit, and then T for move. Even a little bit of rotate. Shift H will scale it down so it kind of narrows. Pull it this way down to the ankle. I'm still going to scale it. Now, using my other views, let's make sure that we kind of keep this in line with where we want to be. And the feet are going to be a little bit difficult. So Command S to save. Hit the Tab key. Let's see how that's looking. And so far it looks pretty good. Good in proportions. And we can go ahead and tweak any of those points and just kind of round that out. But this is all going to be mixed in with a nice little wing. So don't worry too much about how accurate it is. We just want a good shape that will bend nicely for us when we put our bone structure in there. So let's go to the next video and we'll finish that leg and build the arm.